Ferrari had another really bad weekend at Silverstone racetrack where only Hamilton was able to get points. You could hear how upset both Leclerc and Lewis were during the whole race because some of the decisions from their team were really questionable. But now that the Ferrari drivers showed their anger in public again, will the team based in Maranello do something about it? And if so, is it time to start focusing on 2026 already? Ferrari showed once again why they need to completely rebuild their team because of all their internal fights, starting with the strategy team. Before the race even started, Charles Leclerc made a risky bet, thinking that the track was dry enough for slick tires, but that didn't work out. After the first lap of the race, the Monaco driver confirmed that the track was still too wet for slick tires, and Lando Norris was told that George Russell, who was supposed to start in 4th place, decided to take the same risk and was way too slow compared to the fast cars in front. There was a safety car period shortly after, and Leclerc decided to give up on the brave risk and go to the pit for intermediate tires. However, this meant a huge problem for his race already because the initial risk didn't work and he wasn't able to move up many places before it started raining heavily. Talking to his race engineer about how the car felt, he said, "The back is hotter than the front. We need to work on this. Maybe we can talk at the end of the race. I'm getting mixed up information and the brake balance keeps changing. I have no idea where the brakes are right now." As Leclerc entered the last 10 laps of the race, it was clear that the last chance he'd have to score points in Silverstone would be during the switch from intermediate to slick tires. The first move was made by Alonso, and Leclerc was asked whether he'd prefer a used medium or used hard tire. His answer was hinting that the team should put on the yellow striped tire, but at the end of this whole thing, Ferrari put on the soft tire. Yet another example of how everything can go wrong because of bad communication. As this decision didn't work at all, he struggled to keep the car on track, and when sliding at the end of turn 15, he almost took himself and Sainz out, breaking the front wing of his former teammate. The race ended up in 14th place for him, and the major angry outburst followed after the race on the radio where Leclerc said, "Yeah, that was really bad. Sorry, I'm at a loss of words. There is a lot of work to do. I'm not even sure where I placed the car on the track. It was really difficult." Let's not forget Leclerc had a very explosive angry rant after qualifying as well, where he finished 6th, and it was written in the cards that he would have had at least a front row finish. But then again, I don't think he has anyone else to blame other than himself, and he admitted that a lot of comparison needs to be done between him and Hamilton. At the end of the day, the 7-time world champion was competing up front even though he had a lot of trouble getting past the Alpine of Gasly and ended the race behind Hülkenberg. Talking more about this, Leclerc said, "Slick tire at the start. The first 2 parts were dry, and I thought it was going to get dry fast. It was a mistake, but the biggest problem was the speed. Lewis had more speed. My setup is extreme, and it works well in the dry. The only positive thing is Lewis's performance. At least I'll be able to watch him and try and understand where I went wrong. And this is definitely not the first time that he was disappointed by his team. And I believe that it's not going to be the last time either." That's exactly why the Monaco driver said loud and clear that he'll demand answers from the people who it should be held responsible. And when talking about it more, he said, "Part of the reason why we had a bad race was because we thought the track would dry quickly. But I'll say that the biggest part is the lack of speed today. And on that, I want the answers before going back home. So, I'll work hard to try and understand what was going on there." On the other side of the garage, things weren't looking that good for Hamilton either. The 7-time world champion had a lot of trouble understanding the first call from Ferrari to bring him to the pit at the exact time they did, which ended up costing him 4 positions on the grid. Running in 4th place, Hamilton came out of the first pit stop in 8th place, and according to reports, the main reason for that was Hamilton's car GPS being lost. It goes without saying, Hamilton was very disappointed with this, especially considering the fact he didn't feel comfortable with the car at all. Explaining this to his racing engineer about how the car felt throughout the changing conditions, Hamilton said, "The car is so hard to drive, mate. It's jumpy like crazy, and that first call in the pit stop is what cost Hamilton a lot." Further ending his streak of finishing on the podium in Silverstone in every race since 2014. The British driver was not happy with the calls from his team, and when talking about these controversial moves by the strategists, Hamilton didn't hold back as he said, "Not all the calls were good ones. I think the first one wasn't a good call clearly because we got passed by a bunch of people. So I'm not really sure what exactly happened there. We'll have to go back and see what happened, but I was 4th and I came out 8th. So, that's not good. And then I chose to come in close to the right time, but it was super tricky when I got back out and lost a ton of time. I went off at turns 3, 9, 11, etc. This is something that needs to be fixed as well." Before the change from the intermediate to slick tires, Hamilton was around 2 to 3 seconds behind Hülkenberg, but after he changed tires and then Hülkenberg did the same a lap later, the German driver was 10 seconds ahead of Hamilton. This just shows that the strategy wasn't good yet again, further making people question whether or not Ferrari is doing a good job behind closed doors. I don't think the drivers will be happy to continue with this team in 2025, let alone start the new rules in 2026, which is why some serious talks need to be held between the team boss and his crew. There's no doubt that Charles felt extremely uncomfortable with the SF25 because of the massive lack of speed, and he went on to admit later on that he needs to study Lewis's performance. Yes, that's not something that Ferrari should be extremely happy about, because at the end of the day, they finished behind a Sauber on pure speed, something that's happening for the second time for Hamilton in 2025 after Spain. But what this shows is that the Maranello-based team still has a massive amount of work to do in order to compete up front, something that might not even be possible anymore for the rest of the season. An even more sad fact is that Leclerc doesn't think the problems of the car can be solved before the beginning of the race. He was sure that he and his team know exactly what's wrong with the car, and it's something that needs to be worked on in the future. But after Silverstone, the sad behavior of Leclerc came alive yet again, as he admitted that they're stuck with this issue for a longer period of time. Still, this is something that the team boss dismissed, and when talking about this issue that was brought up by Leclerc, the Frenchman said Leclerc also said he won't tell what the issue is. I have to stick to the team order. I won't tell what it is. It can be fixed, but it's true that we're struggling with something. So what's next for Ferrari? The team is now struggling with accepting the feedback of the drivers and putting it to use properly on the car, and it's an urgent matter that needs to be solved as soon as possible. Lewis Hamilton didn't have nice words for his team after the struggles that eventually took away his podium finish. And when talking about this, he said, "I just struggled to keep up. The tires got worse really fast, and the car was unbelievably tricky to drive. I think ultimately I learned a lot today. There's a lot to take from the day. It's only my second time driving in the wet with this car. It's not one that likes these conditions. Having lots of data to take on this for me, I'll sit down with the people who designed the car in the next year, because there are parts of this car that can't go into the following year. The drivers will definitely have a lot to say to the team boss and the engineers in Maranello, because obviously they're not getting what they're asking for. Apart from the communication mistakes and the poor strategy, they're left with an unresponsive car that just doesn't want to do what they're asking it. If the drivers like Leclerc and Hamilton are being forced to deal with such a difficult car, you could easily understand that they'll be bringing a lot of pressure on the team to fix this issue as early as possible. With all of this in mind, what do you think about the radio messages from Hamilton and Leclerc about how the car behaved? And more importantly, do you think Ferrari has a proper fix for it in 2025? Let us know in the comments below. And once to do that, make sure to click on the video that's appearing on your screen right now.